Finally, there's a fifth kind of behavior that will bring reward at the judgment seat of Christ. It is service to Christ from your heart. Colossians 3:23 through 25 tells us, "Whatever you do, work at it with all your heart, as working for the Lord, not for men, since you know that you will receive an inheritance from the Lord as a reward. It is the Lord Christ you are serving." Now look at that first line. Whatever you do, work at it with all your heart. Some of us do serve in church. We do teach a class. We preach. We conduct Bible studies. We work in the Boys or Girls Club. That's good. But at the judgment seat of Christ, it won't be just our outward actions that will be judged, but also the inner motives and attitudes of our heart. These are things that no one else can see. The Bible says, each man's work will become evident. Why? Because the fire of Christ's judgment will test the quality of each man's work. Now, I think you know that, unfortunately, there are some Christians in the church who have served for self-esteem or for pride or popularity or financial gain. It's probably not the only reason they served, but it must not be the primary reason. The question that all of us need to ask is, are we wholly serving Jesus Christ from our heart? Now, I realize that we're all complicated and complex people. Have you ever sat down and wondered if we really do anything totally for Jesus Christ, anything that is not tainted with some ulterior motive? I have. Just for a moment, think about pastors. Wouldn't you agree that no one wants to preach and do a bad job? No one deliberately wants to make people dislike them. And further, pastors have to make a living by preaching, don't they? Shouldn't they think about their paycheck? Are such considerations wrong? No, it's just that they shouldn't be the primary reason why they preach. These other considerations shouldn't affect the message that God has given us. Well, here's a question. When we serve Christ, how can any of us know that God will accept our service when it is tainted with some of these other worldly thoughts? Erwin Lutzer, in his book, Your Eternal Reward, says, Christ takes our acts done with good intentions and cleanses them so that they might be acceptable to God. The Apostle Peter wrote, "You are being built up as a spiritual house for a holy priesthood, to offer up spiritual sacrifices acceptable to God through Jesus Christ." 1 Peter 2:5. In other words, if our deeds are presented to the Father through Christ, if our intentions were primarily good, Christ cleanses them and makes them acceptable to the Father. Now, there's another side to all of this. Some of you have worked on projects which eventually failed. Now, if the primary reason you began that work was because you thought it the best way to serve the Lord, your effort will still be rewarded even though the project wasn't successful. At the same time, let's say that you worked on a project and it was successful, but you did it for the wrong reasons. You didn't serve Jesus Christ. Then Jesus says, be careful not to do your acts of righteousness before men to be seen by them. If you do, you will have no reward from your Father in heaven. In Mark chapter 12, we have a beautiful illustration of someone who did something from her heart. It certainly was not seen by those in the world, even Christians, as being something big or successful. But in the eyes of God, she was a great success. She had served God from her heart. In that passage, we're told, Jesus sat down opposite the place where the offerings were put and watched the crowd putting their money into the temple treasury. Many rich people threw in large amounts, but a poor widow came and put in 2 very small copper coins worth only a fraction of a penny. Calling his disciples to him, Jesus said, I tell you the truth, this poor widow has put more into the treasury than all the others. They all gave out of their wealth, but she, out of her poverty, she put in everything, all that she had to live on. This poor widow was unaware that Christ was watching her, but he was. And because she gave from her whole heart, she was said to have given more to God than all the others. Do you realize that Christ is watching you, and that he can see your heart? Christ's going to reward us at his judgment seat someday according to the attitudes, the desires, and motives in our heart.